From Chicago's CAN TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hi, welcome to another edition of Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to begin today with an admonition that happened right around this table as we were packing up the cameras last week and finishing the show. Alden Laurie was with us. He was he is, of course, with the Chicago Reporter, and we're glad to have him on the show. And we were just kind of standing here, and he said, you know, we had a great conversation today, but you know, the thing is that the real issue right now is what's going on with the statewide offices, with the governor, particularly the governor, a major race that's getting absolutely no attention because everybody's talking about Rahm Emanuel. And I said, well, you know what? We'll fix that on the show next week. So that's what we're doing. We brought some people around the table today who know a little something about the governor's race, and they're going to be able to talk with us about that. But we'll talk about a few other things, too. I'm referring to Fernando Diaz, who is the editor of OI with the Chicago, that's the Chicago Tribune's Latino publication. We have Monroe Anderson joining us today. Monroe is an independent Chicago journalist, long-standing, and a cyber columnist. And Chris Robling is with us. Chris and I have known each other a really long time, and Chris is, among other things, and for our purposes here today, commentator for WGN-TV, but also a commentator on pretty much everything for a long time. We do want to talk about the governor's race because that's a really critical thing, but it's also been a pretty interesting week around Chicagoland for a lot of other things. Monroe, what caught your attention this week?
Oh dear.
Nothing like putting the guy on the spot.
Right, exactly. Now, let's go with the Cook County board and Todd Stroger losing his deputy.
Mm-hmm.
With the 24/9.
Yeah, the 24/9s, yes. which is this deal where you can have a $25,000 contract.
Well,
you don't have to,
or less.
Yeah. So if you send in a contract for $24,900, you can get it under the wire.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, I mean, the thing that I found interesting is we had the arrest,
mm-hmm.
and it's a $300,000 bond.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I read at one point. And so it would be $30,000 you'd have to cough up.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that somebody who was stealing and wheeling and dealing as much as she has been accused of doing,
mm-hmm.
that she'd be able to come up with the money.
Yeah, or maybe they could have made it $29,000.
Right, $29.99. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
For you,
exactly, right, exactly.
Well,
what a deal.
You know, I want to get all these guys involved in this, but I got to tell you that I had a strange feeling when I was seeing that come down. That I myself used to work for the city of Chicago. You did too. Yes. You were a press secretary.
Yes.
A lot of us have been in and out of all of this stuff.
Right.
And I don't think it's telling secrets out of school to say that that's a pretty routine thing that happens in government. You have like a limit of whatever it is, $10,000. So you write a $9,000 deal.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if everybody who had ever done one of those deals was sitting in Cook County Jail right now, we wouldn't be able to. You know, we wouldn't be able to open up City Hall today.
Exactly, right.
That's my opinion.
Oh, yeah, no. And there's this, I mean, there's throughout the state, but particularly in the county of Cook, there's this whole philosophy among many politicians, not all, but almost all, that this is their money, mm-hmm. for them to do as they please with it. And so they have this whole attitude, well, okay, this part's mine and this part's mm-hmm, yours, mm-hmm. and they don't. I guess they don't call it graft, but those of us who pay taxes would.
And you guys can jump in on this, but it's just sort of like I kind of get this weird sense of this is sort of like Stroger is such a lame duck, and this is like really low-hanging fruit, and it's a great way to grab the headlines if you're a prosecutor.
And I've also had someone say to me that they find it peculiar that whenever it's time to send a politician to jail, it's an African American.
Well, you know, you almost can't deny that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, if you just look at the numbers, it really does look that way. I don't know. I
think that one of the distinguishing factors here is the fact that Carla Oglesby was accused, has been accused of sending these funds, sending these contracts to entities that she owns. And so that's the...
Oh yeah, that is a whole new dimension.
That's the idea of the no bid contract and the sort of contract limit beneath which you can execute a contract without a formal review or a sort of a competitive bidding process, so to speak. Most of those are done for some kind of stated purpose, get recorded, etc. This is the case of going out to a hip-hop band that she's connected up with, or going to her own PR firm. So it's just more of the corruption. But I'll tell you, my big event, and I want to get to the governor's race, but I have to tell you, in the mayor's race, just on Wednesday, the panel that was set up by President Obama's White House to investigate the government's response to the BP oil spill issued a very damning report about how incompetent or disingenuous the White House was, the White House staff was in dealing with the spill. Now, that's not good news to anybody, certainly not the people down in Louisiana and Texas who have dealt directly with this issue, or anybody else who cares about the environment, et cetera, et cetera. But in the Chicago mayoral race, this is just one of the many dimes that I think are going to drop onto Rahm Emanuel. And they're going to implicate this sort of patina of an ability to manage. And if he wasn't up to managing something like a response to an environmental disaster, who wants to hand him the keys to City Hall? So well, I think we'll see more of this as the campaign goes on.
There is so much about that, Chris, that's interesting, because already some comparisons are being made to the sort of the left's criticism of the Bush administration for its sort of tin ear about science and unwillingness to allow the scientists to come to the table. And there is some implication that that was going on in the Obama White House, that it's like, we don't want to know these numbers. And it would be hard to believe that anything like that could have been going on without Rahm Emanuel's thumbprint on it somewhere. Because nothing happened, we're led to believe, in that White House without Rahm.
Yeah, because he was a good manager.
Right, and it is entirely plausible, though none of us have direct knowledge of this, that Rahm Emanuel would be saying, we need to keep these numbers as low as possible.
Along those same lines, the FBI raids on the war protesters, I wonder how much of that is, how much does the White House know about that? I mean, did they go to them and say, we want to do this, and did they get a blessing, or were they operating on their own?
And I personally think that that's a huge story. I mean, it kind of actually took me by surprise to think, because I guess you're sort of lulled into this notion that those kinds of things just don't happen quite as much anymore.
Well, and
that was pretty shocking.
And part of the problem is the attacks from the right painting the Obama administration as this radical left organization. You wouldn't expect a radical left administration to be cracking down on war protesters. And so, you think, well, these are the good guys over here, and if in fact that's happening, it's the same old, same old.
Well, and it wrongfoots the left support base for Obama, because A, those are friends and allies, and B, it raises the whole question of the application of standards against the Bush administration. I mean, you talk about Katrina and all of this. The application of standards against the Bush administration relative to suppressing dissent, or whatever it is that the left was screaming about for all those years. And now, so how then do you explain that this administration is different? I mean, I think it creates a lot of issues.
And you're raising that in the context of a guy who is coming to Chicago to be coronated as the next mayor, and that it could raise some really tough issues.
I just don't think that Rahm Emanuel gets a free pass on anything coming out of the Obama administration. And I mean, we're seeing it, today, Thursday, with this grandiose statement on his, I'm not going to campaign today because I don't want to step on the message of the president who's in town campaigning for Pat Quinn, which gets us the governor. And I think that the interrelationships are going to bring as many problems for Rahm Emanuel as they will bring benefits. I mean,
yeah, one of the I would say that one of the key factors, whether he gets a free pass or not in the mayoral race, is going to be money. And the bulk of Obama's background and support came from the North Side. And Rahm Emanuel's no stranger to raising funds. So he's certainly, and I think, has the upper hand in being able to build that war chest super fast. I think it will be a matter of identifying what to keep quiet, what to push, and then where to flood the dollars to make sure that his message,
Yeah, but except this is interesting in that, and I hate to fight old wars, but when Harold Washington ran for mayor way back in the 80s, and Jane Byrne had a lot of money. She had all the money.
Right.
And as Harold would brag, he made her spend every penny.
Right.
And he won.
right.
Nowadays, more money means less because of the internet and all this new media and what have you.
Yeah, but to that
and
point,
so,
when you
it
look
has
at
some impact, obviously, it's still important, but it's not as nearly as important as it used to be even 30 years ago.
Sure, but when you also look at that key factor, I mean, to your point, more important than the money is the base and, frankly, the technology.
Yeah.
And they've got top flight technology folks, and the folks who are going to be able to raise the money, build the volunteer network, be able to flood the news cycle.
Yeah, look, I don't want to elect anybody mayor on this program, and I don't think we should elect Rahm Emanuel mayor.
Right.
And I will tell you, I think that we've got three guys who are really out there, and that's Reverend Meeks, Rahm Emanuel, and Tom Dart, the sheriff, and Reverend Meeks, of course, the state senator. And so I think each of these individuals have, well, I think two of them, Meeks and Dart, have got very serious bases of support.
Right.
And Dart has run citywide several times on the Democratic primary when he ran statewide. He's run as sheriff. He's running countywide today. And Meeks has got his own base of support. I think there are a lot of dynamics between here and there. I don't think that money is going to be the sole determinant of the outcome.
Here's the question. I want to throw this to you, Fernando, because you're an editor, so you're part of the mainstream media. You are more mainstream media than anybody else at this table right now. What the heck is going on with this notion that every time Rahm Emanuel shows up at a hot dog stand, they have to put up a camera platform for it? How is it that he's getting that kind of attention when Gary Chico is an announced candidate for mayor? And
which I was just going to mention, yeah, absolutely, and has a base. And I think it comes to the point of, Scott Lee Cohen. When Scott Lee Cohen was owning the news cycle, it wasn't because of his platform, it wasn't because of his issues, it wasn't because of his track record, it was because of the circus that developed around who is Scott Cohen. And I think that's what's happening with Rahm Emanuel. Here's a guy who spent the last 2 years hanging out in the White House, and now he's at the Roosevelt All-Star.
So
I agree.
All of us have worked in Newsroom.
Yeah,
we're all veterans of Newsroom.
Exactly.
I mean, how does that work? Is it just
because he's a known name? He's a brand. He's a brand name. I was interviewed last week by ABC News Radio Australia. Guy had an Aussie accent. He was in Australia.
He was
yeah, right.
He was a genuine Australian.
Yeah, right.
He was a kangaroo in the yard.
He wasn't what he's playing.
Koala bear with his kid.
One on the radio.
Right.
Okay. And the reason he wanted to talk to me about Rahm is because it was Rahm, the president's chief of staff. I mean,
so he's a national figure who is injecting himself into a.
Yeah,
so then the sort of the follow-up, almost the obverse question is: so does this go away? Does it wear down in a week or two, and then other people start to begin to own the news cycle? I mean, what happens here?
I think that's where the money. But to your point, it's not everything.
Right.
But that's where the internet and who controls not the mainstream news cycle, but who's the moment Rahm Emanuel takes his Tell It Like It Is tour to the Wiener Circle, forget about it. That's going to be everywhere. That's going to be in Australia. If he decides to go to the Wiener Circle and we can see the kind of Rahm Emanuel that everybody says he is behind closed doors, as opposed to this very cleaned and buttoned-up image.
I'm not so sure about that because I know that he carries no weight in the African American community.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because he's never ever been there.
Right.
I mean, they've always taken the African American community for granted.
Right.
So somebody told me, I was having a conversation, I don't want to say who, but an important businessman in the black community. No, right. No. Because I gave my Boy Scouts out.
All right.
Okay, but he says that Rahm and Axelrod and those guys never attend black funerals or do the things that the other polls do to keep that connection going. They said they've been invisible.
See, Rahm right now has got a lot of wealthy friends. He's got a lot of prominence because of where he's been, and we got to get back to the governor's race.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
Okay, I know that. But let me just say, one of his principal constituencies right now are the sort of decision-making editors and producers in New York and Washington.
That's kind of right. That's
And,
kind of what I was getting
what's
at.
happening is that's coming in from the top. And with all respect, when you're sitting at the Tribune or the Sun-Times, or you're sitting at the Channel 2 newsroom or someplace like that, and you're reading in the New York Times about Rahm Emanuel, you're thinking to yourself, hey, wait a minute, I got to go out and cover Rahm Emanuel.
Isn't he going to be at
I mean, if these guys are saying it's important, I got to send some reporter out there.
But also,
so I'm not sure that's going to stand up past the first poll.
Right.
Those guys are not going to be.
The national guys are going to lose.
Well, the editors and the producers in the Boston-Washington corridor are not going to be polled with the voters in the 33rd ward. So I think that's when.
But I think specifically this race and the previous races, and now when you have on the national scale Christine O'Donnell, you have Breitbart ending Sherrod's job. You have. It's not so much the mainstream media is the mainstream media, but it's just one element. It's not the dominant element. And to your point, Monroe, as far as whether or not Rahm attends the funerals, has the support from the established set, the same could be said about the Latino community.
Yeah, right. That's
and
what I was
Monday,
wondering,
when he starts his tour, who's ushering him through Pilsen?
Yeah.
Juan Rangel and Uno.
Yeah.
So
what a surprise!
But that's the point. It's not about showing up to the Latino funeral.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about lining up the established power base, the folks who aren't the elected officials, and who have been supporting
this is where this is where I'm going to differ. Okay, is that that's all well and good if he's the only candidate, but there are heavy hitters in the Hispanic community that are running.
That's why it's
heavy hitters
surprising.
in the Carol Mosley Brown is a candidate in the black community also. And so it's not as easy to just say, oh, well, here's the anointed one, so we're going to push him.
I got to ask, did you hear that Bill Brady's running against Pat Quinn for governor? Did you hear that?
You just read my mind, because I could sit here.
Bill's doing a great job.
Exactly.
We've got at least 2 or 3 more hours of this that we can keep going, but we've got to exercise some discipline here.
Okay, all right.
Just a very quick thing about Gary Chico. Gary Chico has been saying some incredibly sensible things running around quietly in the cover of darkness.
Right.
And one of them was his whole thing today or yesterday about water meters, where he is literally, Mark Brown brings this up today in his column, that he's the only guy who has actually come out and said, we just got to bite the bullet on this thing and put a water meter in everybody's house, and it'll solve a lot of problems.
Right.
None of the others are saying anything quite that, that detailed.
No, Gary's sharp. I've known Gary a long time, and he is sharp. I mean, you cannot take, and he may or may not have a few skeletons that will pop up, but he's sharp.
But and this will be my final word on it. Ultimately, you got to have a mayor who understands how the plumbing system of the city works.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Understands all of the things that our great Richard M. Daley does understand. Let's face it, that's been, I think, one of the sources of his power, is that he really is a kind of an infrastructure geek, and that he knows the city. You could just say to him, 79th and Jeffrey, and he could tell you what's on all 4 sides.
But could he tell you if there's a meter on that house?
I didn't know. He doesn't need that.
And in that same vein, could he tell you if there are tunnels under the city and that you could flood the entire loop?
Did that 10 signal that I just got over there mean we only have 10 minutes left? Is that what that means? You mean we blew 20 minutes on this?
Governor.
All right,
Governor.
Enough of this.
Okay, all right.
Look at this.
Yeah.
The Chicago Sun-Times today.
What a surprise.
Quinn.
We knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, but
we knew that was going to happen.
Okay, but I mean, isn't it true that we're starting to see some movement now? Is this kind of the thing where the state of Illinois took Bill Brady out for a little spin and they kicked the tires, and then they said, oh my God, this guy is a little bit more scary than we thought, we're going to have to go back to Quinn?
I think that there are a couple of dynamics that are working here, honestly. I think the Tribune poll illustrates that there is a natural homing tendency, and the sort of August poll that showed Bill Brady up by, let's just say, I don't know what it was, 7 or 10 or 11 or something like that.
More than that. Yeah,
so he was way up. But what was in that poll was that the Democrats were at that point undecided about Quinn. A lot of Democrats have come home to Quinn. Number two, I think you mentioned the Republican Senate candidate in Delaware, O'Donnell.
Yep.
And I think with O'Donnell, the fact that a guy like Karl Rove joined in questioning O'Donnell's fitness for office meant to the viewing public out there that there might be something about this that we should tune into. And I think that's established a little bit of a local maximum. It may have meant a cresting.
Bill Maher didn't help either.
Well, no, yeah, but people haven't been listening. If people were listening to Bill Maher, then we would never see the poll results for Bill or for Nancy Pelosi that we see and things like that. It's more that the concerns about the Tea Party candidate, which I think were ill-founded generally, but Karl got himself into a mistake there, if you're a Republican like I am, and he was validating concerns from the mainstream media. That then causes people here in Illinois and elsewhere to start coming back to Democratic candidates. Finally, I think
this is interesting. So you're saying that some of the fading that if there is indeed fading that we're seeing with Brady, could be a reflection of the national
some ripple effect.
I think that there isn't a Republican in the world who wants to trade places with Democrats today, and every Democrat wants to trade places with Republicans today. Yeah. So the general environment is still favoring the Republicans. But you ask what is behind the Quinn boomlet. I think there is a little bit of Democrats coming home.
I think it's simpler than that. I think it's his abortion stance, that it's been exposed. And because he's been losing with women, that's what some have moved back to Quinn. A number have gone to Cohn, but they left him. They deserted him.
I don't think that there is a desertion. I think that Brady has done consistently well with a lot of groups because of his focus on jobs and the economy. And the difference thematically in the last sort of 10 days, 2 weeks, is the Ford announcement. And then Quinn's motion to keep the jobs flowing from the stimulus that would have run out. But he decided to put state money in there. State money we don't have, we're borrowing, but he made that, and then he made it a big issue. And then he had the Navistar was earlier, but I mean he is constructing his own jobs and economic recovery narrative arc, and I think that's strengthening his support with Democrats.
But I think without this homecoming from Obama, Quinn Brady could still just hang out there in the wind.
Right.
You know, I mean, to your point, Ken, the amount of ink that's been spilled for the mayoral races, and you know, maybe next week you can touch on the aldermanic races. But you know, the state issues. Not to mention the fact that they've been campaigning for much longer, but they're so complex, and I think neither has really pulled away in defining exactly how they're going to make it work or how they can make it stop the bleeding. Well, that folks are still trying to figure out what's going on.
You're going to have to raise taxes, period. It doesn't matter who it is, you know.
Well, of course, I disagree with Monroe on that.
Well, but you know, we on this program we also sort of look at things through the lens of the media, and I can't help but think that, you know, Quinn has gone through a lot of people in the last month or so. I mean, a lot of people have come and gone, and I honestly can't tell you right now who his image people are and who his.
I think it's all Pat Quinn.
It sounds like it's not just a matter of Brady has begun to fade. Quinn seems to be getting his act together in a way. He seems to be getting a little bit more focused.
Yeah,
I just, excuse me, just one thing. I like the way at the debate which you very ably moderated, Mr. Roebling, at the Union League Club. I thought it was really interesting how Quinn has learned to jump on this dime on the dollar thing of Brady's. And of course the Sun-Times editorial today does this too. That it's not just, you can't just cut every state agency by 10%. It doesn't work that way. That's not creative, you know, management. So Quinn has been able to sort of get a kind of a level of.
If I may, what I saw at that debate, and when you're moderating, but when you're moderating, you don't see the debate everybody, and you're worried about the next question you're going to ask, as you know. But I saw both of them coming into their own. because I moderated debates with him in the primary, and I think both of them have sharpened up, and both of them have refined their points. Quinn certainly was making the points that you were. I saw Brady, unafraid of going directly at Pat Quinn, which maybe people would say, Pat's a nice guy, it's not hard to go at him. But he is the governor of Illinois.
And
Brady was going right at the guy, and he was relentless about it. So I think that
that needs to be said too. I don't mean to say that I didn't think Brady, he did a very good job.
I think that was one debate where both sides won. I think both sides came out of that saying, we've got something here we can talk about.
And we've got a couple candidates who truly have different worldviews. I mean, there is a choice here.
And there also is the Obama factor, and I'm not talking about just merely because he's coming today and whatever he's going to say and do, but I was talking to a black Democratic organizer. I was asking him who's going to win the mayor's race, and he said he didn't care about that. He was focused on November 2. He says because if the Democrats don't win here in Illinois, Obama's toast for president. And so that's an underground message, I think, that's going out.
Very
and that's resonating with folks.
And that makes me wonder why send Rahm now? Because
well,
you draw the attention
Rob.
away.
I think Rob came. I don't think they sit Rob. I mean, I think they wanted Rob in the White House.
Well, I know, but I think I hope somebody gets that story, because I think that the departure of Rahm from the White House was truncated. I mean, there was kind of an accelerated, and there was an air of skipping out of town before the sheriff shows up. And in this case, the sheriff might actually show up.
Right.
I think
the
he will.
sheriff is on his
I think he's on. Let me tell you, the bloodhounds are out.
I think he's just outside the door right now. But I mean, that's for another show with a different focus. But it will be very interesting to see how the Obama administration changes in the post-Rahm era. I mean, it very well may take on a whole different. It may get legs in a different way.
It's impossible to see them going to the center, though. I mean, I think we as Chicagoans understand the power in that place. I mean, this is Michelle.
Well, see, I think
Michelle runs the place.
Okay, but
hold on. And Valerie works for Michelle. The problem with David and Rahm, they only worked for Barack.
But the thing is, as somebody who is a
and
liberal,
like
they are in the center. See, that's
they are in the center.
You conservatives make up this whole narrative about these guys being to the left. I mean, why do you think his left flank is so upset with him? Because he's in the center. Right, exactly.
The left needs its own tea party.
Yeah, right.
I've been down so long, it looks like up to me.
I'm just going to let these guys keep going, because this is going to go on for another couple hours, but we unfortunately have to split, and we'll be back again in another week with another edition of Chicago Newsroom. And I'm really happy to have you all here. I hope every one of you will commit to come back again sometime.
Absolutely.
You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a community service of CAN TV, as you already know. And of course, you can watch us right here on cable at 6:30 on Thursday nights. But you can also find this and other programs online at cantv.blip.tv or blip.tv, or you can check us out there, subscribe on iTunes. You can watch us anytime you want and listen to us, and we hope you will. Thanks very much, and we'll be back with another edition of Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis, and thanks to everybody for making the show possible. See you next time.